A woman runs into her husband who's been dead for 5 years. She saw the man get up and walk towards her. The woman turned her head away. She didn't turn her head until the man had passed by, watching the man's back gradually fade away. It was as if her dead husband had come back to life. She followed the man carefully, looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar man in front of her. This couldn't help but remind her of her husband again, 5 years ago, to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. And her husband went on a trip to the beach. He would surprise her from time to time, but when he asked her to go swimming with him, Annie refused. But she never expected that her husband would be gone forever. When she found him on the beach, her husband was not breathing, and for the rest of her life, Annie lived in pain. She even took out her husband's photo again and again every day. She was afraid that she would forget what her husband looked like. Even when she met a man with the same hairstyle as her husband, Annie would go up to him and look at him. But while she was lost in the memories of her husband, the glass in her hand slipped and fell to the floor. She bent down to pick up the broken glass, but she held the glass shards tightly in her palm. It was as if only the pain in her heart would paralyze her thoughts of her husband. Annie spent 5 years in a state of confusion, until the day she came back to a place she had visited with her husband. She saw a man who looked exactly like her husband. Annie's dying heart seemed to stir again. In order to confirm whether the man was her husband or not, she followed him all the way, from the museum to the garage. But before Annie could get close enough, the man had already left in his car. But she didn't give up, and for the next few days, Annie went to the park bench every day and waited for the man to show up. But there was still no sign of him. She even memorized the timing of the sprinklers. But God didn't fail her. She finally met the man's car again in the garage. The man was about to drive away. Annie immediately got up to greet him, but her voice was muffled by the sound of the engine, so she drove off in a car and chased after him. She almost got into an accident when she ran a red light, but the motorcycle in front of her blocked her way. Annie memorized the man's license plate number. She immediately went online to check the owner's information. Turns out the man's name is Jack. He was an art teacher at the university. Annie then followed the address to the school. When she saw the familiar face again, Annie's eyes were filled with shock. It was as if her husband was standing right in front of her. Annie's tears flowed uncontrollably.